I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to catch his wife cheating. Hell, I thought I knew her inside out. Sarah was supposed to be this tough, bitchy woman who always had an excuse for everything, but I trusted her. We'd been together for 8 years, married for 5, and honestly I thought we had a good thing going, despite the occasional fights, which I always blamed on her stress or her mood swings. But beneath that tough exterior, I figured she was just a woman who knew how to hide her problems. I was naive, completely blind to what was really happening. It all started last year when I went on what was supposed to be a routine space trip. You know, the kind where they tell you it's just a quick jet around the planet, but in reality, it's a full-blown relativistic test program. They called it temporal perception recalibration, a fancy name for the kind of space travel that messes with your head, your sense of time. The idea was to help astronauts adjust their subjective time perception when traveling near light speed so they don't go totally nuts upon returning to Earth. I was one of the lucky volunteers. Well, lucky might be the wrong word, but I was interested. I wanted to see the stars, to push the limits. The thing is, I kept detailed records of my subjective time experiences, and for the most part everything went smoothly. During the weeks I was gone, I was away from her, focused on the mission. But after I got back, little things started to change. She was colder, more distant. She started canceling plans, saying she had work stuff. But I noticed her phone was always going off at odd times, and she'd hide it like it was a damn secret. I thought maybe it was just her usual bitchy attitude, but deep down I was starting to feel uneasy. I'd find her phone in the bathroom or hidden behind the couch, and I'd check. Nothing concrete, just texts from some guy named Mark, mostly late at night, always vague, always dismissive when I asked about it. But I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe she was just talking to someone about work or venting. But then I started noticing things in her schedule. She'd disappear for hours, claiming she was at the gym, but I'd see her car parked near some downtown bar. She'd come home smelling different, wearing new perfume I'd never seen before, and her excuses about where she'd been got more and more elaborate. She'd lie outright, saying she was at the grocery store when I knew for a fact she'd been elsewhere. The worst part, her attitude. She was bitchy, snapping at me for asking questions, calling me paranoid or insecure every time I got suspicious. One night I decided to follow her. I figured if she's sneaking around, I might as well see who she's with. She said she was going to a friend's birthday party, but I saw her slip out of the house at 10 p.m. and head toward that bar downtown. I parked a block away, watching from the shadows. That's when I saw her walk into a hotel with Mark. They were holding hands, kissing, laughing like a couple of teenagers. My stomach sank. I couldn't believe it. My wife, who had just lied to my face about being somewhere innocent, was cheating on me with this guy. I felt like I'd been hit by a train. My mind was racing. How long had this been going on? How could she lie so effortlessly? And why? I had so many questions, but mostly I felt a deep, overwhelming sense of betrayal. She had been hiding this secret for months, maybe longer, while I was out there recalibrating my perception of time, thinking I was just busy with science. And she was out there, cheating on me, with some guy who, from what I could tell, was just some sleazy bartender with a reputation for screwing anything that moved. I didn't confront her right then. No, I needed to think, to process what I saw. But that night I couldn't sleep. The images kept repeating in my head, the way she kissed him, her bitchy attitude slipping away for just a moment, revealing a side I never knew. I felt a rage building inside me, hot and uncontrollable. How could she do this? After everything I'd given her, my time, my trust, my love. I thought about the years we spent together, the memories, the promises we made. All of it seemed so meaningless now. But I also knew I couldn't just flip out and accuse her without evidence. That's not who I am, so I dug deeper. I went through her phone, her emails, her social media accounts. I found more signs, strange texts, late-night calls, even a picture of her and Mark on her Instagram captioned, "What a night." The confirmation hit me hard. She'd been lying to my face, sneaking around and betraying everything we'd built. It was like my entire reality was cracking apart. The betrayal was one thing, but what cut even deeper was how she lied about everything. Her words, her excuses, total bullshit. She'd call me insecure, clingy, paranoid. She accused me of being too interested in her whereabouts, but it was her who was hiding things, not me. And I realized then that she had been controlling the narrative, keeping her affair hidden while I was busy recalibrating my perception of time and space. She used my absence as an excuse to act out to be with him, to betray me in the most personal way. I felt so stupid for trusting her, for believing her lies. I felt angry, betrayed, humiliated, and I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her keep this up, not without consequences. But I also didn't want a messy fight. I wanted her to know I'd found out that I was onto her. I planned to confront her, but I also wanted to think about how to respond. I needed to catch her in the act, show her I wasn't blind. This wasn't just about some affair. This was about trust, about the life we built together. And she had shattered it with her bitchy lies and her blatant cheating. So I stayed up all night, watching her social media for any signs of new lies, waiting for the right moment to confront her. I knew this wasn't going to be easy. I felt a mixture of heartbreak and rage swirling inside me. I was ready to face her, ready to demand answers, but part of me was already planning my next move. Because once you catch your wife cheating, everything changes. And I knew deep down I couldn't go back to how things were. Not anymore. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding head and a racing mind. I replayed everything I saw, every lie she'd told, every excuse she'd used to cover her tracks. The betrayal felt like a weight pressing down on my chest, and I knew I couldn't just sit on this anymore. I had to confront her, but I also wanted to do it in a way that would force her to admit the truth. I didn't want a messy scene, but I wanted her to understand I wasn't going to be played anymore. I spent the rest of the day trying to plan what I'd say, but honestly, I was too angry to think clearly. I knew she'd be home around 6 p.m., so I decided to prepare myself. I cleaned the house, which was stupid. I wasn't even in the mood to do chores, but I guess I wanted some sense of normalcy. As the hours ticked by, I kept checking my phone, waiting for her to come home so I could finally get this over with. When she finally arrived, she was in her usual bitchy mood, snapping at me because I wasn't doing anything right or because I wasn't paying enough attention. I looked at her, her face tired but smug, and I lost it. I told her I knew everything, the lies, the affair, Mark, the hotel. Her reaction was instantaneous. She rolled her eyes, shrugged, and shot back with her typical attitude. "You're overreacting. You always do. It's just sex anyway. People cheat, people get bored. It doesn't mean anything." She said it so casually, like she was just commenting on the weather, but my blood boiled. I pushed her on it. I demanded she come clean, told her I knew how she'd been sneaking around. Her face twisted into a sneer and she started lying again, saying I was crazy and paranoid, that she hadn't done anything wrong. She said Mark was just a friend, just someone she vented to, and that I was jealous and insecure, but I wasn't buying it. I told her she had no right to lie to me, especially after I'd seen her with him holding hands. Her reaction was pure bitchy deflection. She called me possessive, insecure, and accused me of not trusting her. She kept telling me I was imagining things, that I was making a fuss over nothing. She even had the nerve to say I was crazy for thinking she'd cheat. I felt my fists clenched. I was furious, but I kept my voice controlled. I told her I'd seen enough, that I wasn't going to be played anymore, and that I wanted her to leave if she wanted to keep up her bullshit lies. She looked at me with that snarky smirk, like she was amused by how naive I was. That's when she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You don't have any proof. You're just jealous because I still love you, but I need more than what you're giving me." I almost laughed. That was her classic way of turning it around, blame me, make me the bad guy. But I knew better. I knew she was lying, hiding, cheating, and she was trying to gaslight me into doubting myself. I felt so betrayed, so stupid for trusting her, for thinking we had something real. The fight escalated quickly. She stormed out of the house, saying she was done with my paranoia and that she'd be going to her friend's place to cool off. I stood in the doorway, watching her leave, rage and heartbreak twisting inside me. I wanted to follow her, to scream at her, but I knew that wouldn't help. I also knew I needed to do something smarter, something that would make her realize I was just some naive husband who could be fooled. That night I sat alone, replaying everything I'd learned. Her lies, her sneaky behavior, the way she dismissed me like I was nothing. I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I had to decide whether this marriage was worth saving or if I needed to cut my losses and walk away. But for now, I let her think I was giving her space, that I was just a little hurt, trying to keep it together. Deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. The betrayal was too deep, the lies too many. I had to come up with a plan. I needed proof, solid proof, if I was going to confront her again or make her face her actions. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me, not anymore. But more than that, I was feeling crushed. The woman I thought I knew was a liar, a cheat, a manipulator. And all those feelings, anger, sadness, betrayal, were swirling inside me, threatening to explode. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and I didn't know what was going to happen next. Over the next few days, I couldn't focus on anything else. The images of her with Mark haunted me at every turn. I kept going over everything I'd uncovered, trying to piece together the full picture. I knew I needed more than just suspicion. I needed undeniable proof if I was going to do anything decisive. So I started digging deeper into her digital footprint, her emails, messages, everything I could access without making it obvious I was spying. I didn't want to seem obsessive, but at this point I was desperate for clarity. I found more than I expected. Hidden in her email drafts was a series of messages she'd exchanged with Mark, flirty, suggestive, sometimes downright explicit. She'd been planning to meet him again, even talking about getting away together. She'd written about how much she needed a break from the boring life with me, how she felt alive with him. Reading those messages was like a punch to the stomach. It confirmed what I'd seen with my own eyes and then some. What hit me even harder was the realization that her supposed excuses had been lies all along. She told me she was just venting, that Mark was just a friend. But her own words painted a different picture. She was actively sneaking around, planning clandestine meetings. I felt a mixture of rage and heartbreak. I'd been so blind, so trusting, and she'd been lying right to my face. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I wanted to be prepared. I set up my old recording device, one of those tiny things I'd kept from my space trip, just in case. I kept it hidden, waiting for the right moment to catch her in the act or get her to admit everything voluntarily. I also made sure to get some physical evidence, screenshots of her messages, photos I'd secretly taken when I followed her to the hotel, and her location logs from my phone. I was building a case, a complete dossier that would make her impossible to deny. The day she came home after her cooling-off period was tense. She was her usual bitchy self, snapping at me, trying to brush things off like I was overreacting. But I was calm, cold even, and I played my cards right. I waited until she was distracted, making coffee, ignoring my questions, and then I pressed record. When I finally confronted her again, I did it with everything I had. The evidence, the screenshots, the timeline. I laid it all out in a matter-of-fact way, showing her the messages, the location logs, everything. Her reaction was immediate. She froze, then started laughing, her fake bitchy laugh that made my stomach turn. She said I was crazy, that I was misinterpreting everything. She claimed I was stalking her, that I was paranoid, and that I needed help. She accused me of trying to control her, of being jealous because she was better than me, that she was the one who was really sacrificing for our marriage. She played the victim as if I'd done something wrong, but I had the evidence. I pressed her harder, asking her what she thought would happen if I found out she'd been lying all along. Her face turned red, her bitchy attitude morphing into anger. She spat at me, told me I was crazy, that I was possessive, and that I'd ruined everything. She said she was done with this bullshit, and then stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. I sat there, stunned, my hands trembling and my mind racing. I had her now, and I knew I could end this, once and for all. But as much as I wanted to lay everything out and end it, I also felt a strange sense of relief. This was what I'd suspected for so long, and now I had proof. I could finally stop pretending that everything was okay. I realized that her bitchy, manipulative attitude had been her way of hiding her guilt, her way of throwing up walls to keep me from confronting the truth. And now that I had that truth, I knew I could decide what to do next. The emotional roller coaster was exhausting. I felt betrayed, angry, and utterly devastated. I trusted her with everything, my time, my love, my life, and she'd betrayed me in the worst way possible. That night, I stayed up thinking about it all, about how I'd been so naive, about how I'd let her lie and manipulate me for so long. I kept asking myself if I could ever forgive her, if I even wanted to. The answer was no, but I also knew I needed to cool off, to think about what I really wanted in my life now. The thing is, once you find out your wife's been cheating on you, everything changes. That sense of security, that trust, it's shattered. And even if you want to fix things, it's never the same afterward. I knew I'd crossed a line, and I had to figure out whether I was willing to stay in a marriage that had been so thoroughly betrayed or if I should walk away. As I looked at her empty side of the bed, I felt a bitter taste in my mouth. The betrayal was too deep, and I wasn't sure I could ever rebuild what we had. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let her get away with it without consequences. Not anymore. The following days dragged on in a haze of confusion and anger. I stayed home from work, just sitting in the living room, staring at the walls, replaying everything I'd uncovered. Every minute that passed felt heavy with the weight of betrayal. I didn't know what I was going to do next, whether to confront her again, pack up and leave, or take some kind of revenge. Honestly, I was just numb, trying to process how the woman I loved could turn into this manipulative, lying bitch. I kept the evidence close, hidden on my laptop and phone. I wasn't ready to confront her again just yet. I needed to think, to plan my next move carefully. I knew she'd come home at some point, probably to try to spin her way out of it again, but I wasn't going to let her. I was done being the naive husband who believed her bullshit. I was angry now, hot, furious anger that I'd held back for too long. That evening she finally arrived, her attitude as bitchy as ever. She stomped through the door, tossing her purse on the table, and immediately started criticizing everything in sight. I played it cool, not giving her the satisfaction of seeing me upset. But inside I was boiling. I looked at her and decided I was done waiting. I had enough proof, enough of her lies, and enough of her attitude. I pulled out my phone, ready to record again, this time to catch her in her latest lie. She immediately sensed I was up to something. She snapped at me, "What now? Are you spying on me? God, you're such a fucking psycho." I did say a word. I just kept my eyes on her, pressing record. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk, like she was already winning, thinking she could manipulate her way out of this again. But I wasn't going to let her, not this time. Without warning, I played her the recording of her last lie, her claiming Mark was just a friend, that she wasn't cheating. Her face twisted into a mask of anger, then panic. She tried to deny everything, her voice trembling as she spat. "You're crazy. I don't know what you're talking about. You're just jealous, insecure, and paranoid. I don't have to explain myself to you." Her words were slick, rehearsed, but I'd seen through her. The evidence was in my hand, and I was ready to make her own words work against her. She started to get defensive, her bitchy demeanor melting into outright hostility. "You think you're so smart, huh? You're just some space traveler who's lost his mind. You're accusing me of shit that's not even real." She stormed up close, her face inches from mine, her eyes blazing with fury. "You're nuts. You're overreacting. Just drop it before you ruin everything." But I stood my ground. I told her I knew the truth now, that I had everything on her, her texts, her location logs, her own words. That's when her mask cracked. She looked at me with a mixture of contempt and desperation. Her voice turned cold and venomous. "You're just a jealous, insecure little man who can't handle his wife having a life. If you think you can control me, you're dead wrong." She started to accuse me of being controlling, of suffocating her, trying to turn the tables. All I could feel was a rising sense of frustration. She was so good at lying, at twisting the truth, that I almost doubted myself. But then I remembered the proof and the nights I'd spent watching her sneaking around. I told her I was done with her bullshit, that I'd had enough of her lies, her manipulations. I told her she could stay or go, but I was finished playing her game. Her face twisted into a sneer, and she shot back, "Fine. If you want to be a jealous psycho, go ahead. But I'm not going to sit here and be accused of shit I didn't do." She stormed into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I sat down, realizing I'd finally taken control of the situation but feeling emptier than ever. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything, her lies, her cheating, her bitchy attitude. All the trust I'd lost in her, the years we built together, slipping away like grains of sand. I felt a strange mixture of relief and heartbreak. Relief because I finally had proof, and heartbreak because I knew nothing would ever be the same again. I'd always wondered if I was imagining things, if I was just insecure, but now I knew the truth. And that truth was burning inside me like a hot coal. I had a decision to make. I could keep pushing, try to salvage what was left, or I could walk away. Honestly, part of me wanted to do both, get revenge, make her regret everything, and at the same time, free myself from this nightmare. But I knew whatever I chose, my life would never be the same. Trust was broken, maybe forever, and I was just trying to survive the aftermath, wondering how I got here and whether I'd ever find a way to move on. All I knew was I wasn't going to let her control the narrative anymore. This was my life, and I had to take it back one way or another. The days that followed were a whirlwind of planning and emotional chaos. I found myself oscillating between rage and deep sadness, unsure whether I wanted to scream, cry, or just disappear into some remote corner of the world. I spent hours going over everything I'd uncovered, trying to decide my next move. I knew I had enough evidence to blow everything wide open, her lies, her affair, her manipulative attitude. But I also understood that confronting her again might just escalate things and blow up in my face. I started to realize that I didn't just need to catch her in her lies. I needed to understand her mindset. Why did she do this? What was she really after? Was it just sex, or was there something else? That's when I remembered her bitchy attitude, the way she dismissed my concerns, and how she'd always played the victim when I accused her of anything. It struck me that her behavior wasn't just about cheating. It was about control and manipulation. That realization made me more determined to handle this with some sense of strategy. One morning, I decided to test her. I sent her a text, pretending to be interested in some kind of secret rendezvous, knowing she'd get curious or defensive. I kept it casual, made it sound like I was planning to meet someone, and told her I'd be out late. I wanted to see if she'd reveal her hand, if she'd tell me where she was or who she was with. She took the bait immediately. Her reply was laced with bitchy sarcasm, accusing me of cheating or playing some game. That's when I knew she couldn't resist the thrill of deception, even in her own mind. That afternoon, I set up a detailed plan. I wanted to catch her again, but this time I had to be smarter. I installed a tracking app on her phone, something I'd carefully researched. I knew it wasn't entirely legal, but at this point I didn't care. I needed to know where she was, who she was with, all the details. The app gave me her location, real-time updates, and even her messages. It was a dangerous move, but I felt I had no choice. I couldn't keep trusting her when she was clearly lying and sneaking around with Mark. What I found surprised me. She'd been meeting up with him even more often than I'd suspected. Not just at night, but during the day, claiming she was busy at work. Her lies were so elaborate I almost admired her ability to manipulate the truth. She'd meet him at cafes, hotels, even in a nearby park. It was like she was trying to hide her affair from everyone, including herself. Whenever I looked at the live feed from the tracking app, I'd see her sneaking into some shady place, her bitchy attitude back in full force, like she didn't care who knew. That's when I decided I had enough. I couldn't keep playing this game of hide and seek. I knew I had to confront her face to face, but I also wanted her to understand I wasn't just some naive husband anymore. I was preparing for a showdown, something raw, direct, and final. I drafted what I would say, how I'd tell her I knew everything, how I'd tell her she was finished. I was ready, but I also knew I had to be careful. If I pushed too hard, she might turn even more bitchy, manipulate me into doubts, or turn the tables altogether. One evening, I waited for her to come home, the evidence laid out in my mind and on my phone. When she arrived, she was in her typical bitchy mood, slamming the door and snapping at me. I turned on the recording device I'd hidden, and I looked her in the eye. I asked her to sit down, to listen to what I had to say. I told her I knew about Mark, about her meetings, about her lies. I played her the live location logs and the messages, watching her face shift from cocky to panicked in seconds. Her bitchy smirk faded, replaced by wide eyes and a cold glare. She started arguing again, yelling that I was crazy, that I was stalking, that I was jealous, but I had enough. I pressed her on her lies, her manipulation, her betrayal. I told her that I was sick of her playing the victim while she was out screwing someone else. Her face contorted with anger and frustration. She spat, "You don't have any proof, you're just jealous and insecure. You're imagining things." But her words sounded hollow now. She knew I had her, and that fact alone made her go silent for a few seconds. Then she did what she always did when cornered. She started crying, but not the sobbing kind. It was a bitchy, fake cry, like she was trying to manipulate me into feeling sorry for her. She said she was sorry if I felt hurt, but she refused to admit anything concrete. She kept insisting she was done with this, that she'd leave if I kept accusing her of shit, and that I was ruining everything. Her bitchy attitude was back full force, trying to flip the script again. She was so good at it, I almost believed she might pull some stunt to turn me into the bad guy, but I wasn't going to fall for it anymore. I'd seen through her lies, her manipulations, her carefully crafted persona. I told her she could leave that night if she wanted. It was over. I no longer trusted her, and I wasn't going to keep pretending everything was fine. I gave her the ultimatum, told her I'd had enough and that I was done being played for a fool. She looked at me with that bitchy snarl, then grabbed her purse and stormed out, leaving me alone in the silence of the house, feeling a strange mixture of relief and despair. That night, I realized something important. I'd finally taken control of a situation that had been spiraling out of control for months. I'd confronted her with undeniable proof, and now I had to decide whether to fight for us or cut my losses. But one thing was clear: her manipulation, her lies, her betrayal, they were not going to continue. I was done being her pawn, and I knew I'd never trust her again. Whatever happened next, I knew I had to protect myself. She was a liar, a cheat, and a bitchy manipulator. I'd let her take enough of my life already. Time to decide what I really wanted and how I was going to move forward from this nightmare. The days that followed felt like walking through a fog. I kept replaying everything: her lies, her sneers, the way she dismissed my feelings like I was some jealous idiot. Honestly, I'd never felt so betrayed in my life. Trust, once so solid between us, had crumbled completely. I knew I couldn't stay in that marriage, not after everything I'd uncovered. Yet part of me still hesitated, torn between anger and sadness, wondering if I was just making things worse by walking away. But deep down, I understood that I'd been through enough. I'd been lied to, cheated on, manipulated. I deserved better. The night she left, she did so with that classic bitchy attitude, flipping her hair, throwing her words like knives, acting like the victim. But I wasn't buying it anymore. When she slammed the door behind her, I finally felt a strange sense of relief. It was as if a heavy burden had lifted. I sat down on the couch, took a deep breath, and stared at the empty space where she'd just been. I realized that I'd spent so long trying to save something that was beyond saving. She had proven to me that she was no longer the woman I thought she was, no matter how much I loved her, no matter how many years we'd shared. That night, I finally allowed myself to cry, not just because of her betrayal, but because I'd lost hope. I thought I knew her, but I'd been so blind. The woman I had loved had been hiding this all along: her bitchy attitude, her lies, her manipulations. And now that I saw her true face, I couldn't unsee it. I felt devastated, empty, and somehow relieved at the same time. I knew I had to move on, that I couldn't just pretend things would go back to normal, because they wouldn't. Nothing would be normal after this. The next day, I started packing some of my things. I didn't want to make a scene, but I knew I had to get out of that house. I called a lawyer, started the process of separation. It was hard, harder than I expected, but I also felt a strange sense of empowerment. Like I was finally taking control of my life again. My trust had been shattered, but I was determined not to let her poison me anymore. I was done with the lies, the manipulations, and the bitchy attitude that made her so unbearable. In the end, I realized that the betrayal was more than just about her cheating. It was about her total disregard for what we had, her selfishness, her manipulation. I learned that sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most, even when you least expect it. But I also learned that you can pick yourself up, rebuild your life, and find happiness again, even after the worst kind of betrayal. It's not easy, and it never will be, but I know I'll be okay. Because I've faced the brutal truth, and I refuse to let her define my future. Now I'm focusing on myself, working on healing and moving forward, knowing that I deserve honesty, respect, and someone who truly cares. It's a long road, but I'm walking it. And I hope anyone else out there going through something similar realizes you don't have to accept lies, manipulation, or betrayal. You're worth more than that. Trust is sacred, and once broken, it's damn hard to rebuild. But sometimes, walking away is the only way to save yourself. That's what I've learned after all this, and I'll never let anyone take that away from me again.